And joining the show right now is a contributor at Three Down Nation. It is Santino Filoso, right?
There you go. Yeah, nailed it. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on to talk Red Blacks.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
Now, I look at the past 4 seasons of Red Blacks football. It's 3-15, 3-11, 4-14 the last 2 seasons. And then I went back to the 2018 season when they made the Grey Cup against Calgary. They actually had 14 wins that season alone, including the preseason and the playoffs. How critical is it for this team to get off to a good start?
Honestly, a good start is essential just to kind of get the fans to buy in and everything like that. But at the end of the day, if they stumble out of the gate, it's okay, but this has to be a playoff season. I think, you've talked about the struggles that have gone on. Ottawa is a good football market, but I do think that there is a little bit of apathy setting in. People want to, because it's not even that Ottawa has been bad in recent years. It's just they haven't even been entertaining. So the offense has been very stagnant. It's crazy that since Trevor Harris left, whether that was of his own accord or the team didn't want him anymore, there's people that go back and forth on that one. But the reality is Ottawa's had 10 quarterbacks trying to find, since then, start a game, trying to find, right? They've had Dominic Davis, John Jennings, Will Arndt, Matt Nichols, Devlin Hodges, Caleb Evans, Nick Arbuckle, Tyree Adams, Dustin Crum last year, and of course, Jeremiah Masoli, who struggled with injuries. And to be honest with you, even when Masoli's been healthy, he hasn't actually been great for Ottawa. So I think having Dru Brown now, if he's actually ready to be the guy and if he can give them some stable quarterback play, I think that will go a long way. Because, fans want to be entertained. In the past couple of years, even when Ottawa's had leads in fourth quarters, there's kind of been a feeling amongst the fan base, like, how are they going to lose this game? And unfortunately, more often than not, they found ways to do it. So I think it really is time for like a culture reset. And I think, that Ottawa's front office has done a good job, especially this past few off seasons, kind of identifying who players are they believe should be a part of the solution going forward. And I think that they brought in some guys with good attitudes that, can hopefully contribute to that kind of winning culture and to kind of put these past couple of years behind the franchise so they can go back to that momentum they had early on when they came back to town.
Now, I feel like continuity is very important to a franchise in sports, and in the CFL, you look at the most successful ones, they haven't changed much in that front office, but you did talk about a culture reset. How tough is that to pull off when you have the same guys in place? You know what I mean? It does feel like Bob Dice and Sean Burke, they got to be feeling that seat heat up a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely think there's pressure on both of them, right? Obviously Desjardins was previously the only GM that Ottawa had. But Burke kind of came in, and it takes some time to put your own stamp on a team. Obviously, you can't change a team. Well, you can change a team overnight, but there's no guarantee that's going to be successful. So I think now that he's had 2 full drafts, 2 full off seasons under his belt, this is distinctly his team now, right? I don't think there's really many holdovers from the Desjardins era. And, he had his coach. He didn't inherit Bob Dice. He hired Bob Dice. I think at this point, the reality is it's a results-oriented business, and now it's time to get those results. And, I think that despite everything that's gone on in the past, there is kind of a feeling amongst the fan base that it is possible and it is doable. Because, some of the additions they had, like getting a Darius Pickett, the defense was already kind of a strength. Unfortunately, last year, I think, I have to double check, but I believe the stat is that they did give up not only a league high 504 points, but I think that's the most points that any Ottawa Red Blacks franchise has given up since they came back to the league in 2014. So that's a lot of points, but a lot of those points came from the defense just being on the field too much. So, the defense was very strong. They managed to retain and bring back their entire defensive line. They've got a very veteran linebacking core. And then when you add in a Darius Pickett, I think that's a huge, huge addition. And then you bring a guy like Dominic Rhymes in, and, he started with Ottawa. It kind of drove fans crazy because he had 1,000 yards, but he probably could have had 1,500 that one season because he had a lot of drops and he was just very inconsistent. But he's gone to BC. His game's developed. He's refined his route running. His hands have been phenomenal. And so I think there's a lot of excitement having him come back because he definitely is a tone setter. He has that kind of alpha mentality that you want. And, I think Jalen Acklin has that as well. But for whatever reason, maybe he was being played out of position. Maybe he kind of struggled with injuries. He didn't get the quarterback play. I think it's been kind of hard. So having like Rhymes and Acklin, and then you throw guys in there like Justin Hardy, Braylon Addison. I think there's a lot of potential for Ottawa's offense to be able to move the ball, which is, as I said, something that fans are going to be looking forward to, I think.
I do feel like the fans were almost sort of understanding with the struggles of the offense, because some of those injuries, I mean, they were not self-inflicted. Some were just complete accidents. But now we already talked Dru Brown a little bit. He gets acquired from Winnipeg for the draft pick. They sign him to 2 years, but it's still a crowded quarterback room. I remember Dustin Crum last year, like the fans, even the team. I remember that comeback win, the Crumback, and the celebration from Dice and the fans. It was such a good moment from last year, but obviously you want more than 4 of those in a season. Tyree Adams is still there. Jeremiah Masoli took a pay cut to stay. Like, where does he fit in? Is Brown starting as, the solid number one?
I think Brown's gotten the majority of the reps. So I think that the idea is he will be the undisputed starter. Of course, you never say never, depends on how the preseason goes. But I think that they're giving Brown a lot of leeway, and kind of he's approaching the job. And I think the team is approaching the preseason and training camp as if he is the starter. You talked about Dustin Crum, and kind of wanting to see a few more wins. I agree completely. But at the same point in time, I mean, if you really think back, when was the last time you saw a rookie quarterback start as many games as Crum did? I think he started 14 or 15 games as a rookie. You don't see that in the CFL. In the CFL, guys will kind of dip their toe in, play a quarter here or there, a preseason game, maybe 1 or 2 games, but they'll kind of, I'll say, season for a few years. And then before they actually kind of take on the starting role, kind of like Dru Brown, right? He spent a couple years in Winnipeg. He's played here and there when Collaros has been hurt, but he didn't, it's funny to say, but Dustin Crum actually has more starts than career-wise than Dru Brown does. But of course, when you start a rookie at quarterback, especially when there are other injury issues along the offensive line and the receiving corps like Ottawa had last year, you have rookie growing pains. So on one hand, I do think that it's very interesting for Ottawa that if for any reason they need to turn to Crum, you would hope that he's a lot further along in his development than most second-year quarterbacks would be, just simply because he has all that playing experience, good moments and bad moments that kind of every quarterback has to go through. You mentioned Tyree Adams. I don't think he's fully healthy yet, but I know that he's working back from his ACL injury. And of course, he didn't play much last year, but when he did, he looked good and was quite exciting. And then you talked about Jeremiah Masoli, and this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I think best case for Ottawa, he doesn't take a snap this season. Because to me, if Masoli doesn't step on the field for any meaningful plays, then it means that Dru Brown is the guy. Or it means that if Dru Brown goes down, Dustin Crum has stepped up, and you kind of got that sophomore, not a slump, but the opposite, like a sophomore takeoff, if anything. So I think in a perfect world, the Red Blacks don't want to see Masoli on the field. Of course, I think it's excellent having that veteran and experienced voice in the room. I think it might help a lot too, especially as they're installing Tommy Condell's system, right? Masoli has experience with that. So of course, if Masoli ends up on the field, for any reason, everyone's going to be cheering for him, myself included. I hope, especially after the horrible, horrible injury luck he's had the past couple of years. I mean, it would really be nice to see him have a good comeback story. But I think as far as the Red Blacks are concerned, you kind of don't want to see him on the field. You want to see Brown be that guy.
Well, let's talk about Tommy Condell then. He comes in as the OC of the team, replacing Kahari Jones. Condell spent several years in Hamilton, and those Ticat fans grew kind of restless with that offense, but what were you expecting to see from them? You mentioned Masoli being familiar with the system, and I would say Jalen Acklin would be familiar with that system as well.
Yeah, and also Braylon Addison, right? So I think you have quite a few guys who are kind of versed in the system and the verbiage. And I think, obviously, if you're Ottawa, the hope is that you get that 2019 Tommy Condell offense, which, I think led the league in scoring. The Ticats went 15-3, got them a trip to the Grey Cup. And that was a very dangerous attack, of course. That was a while ago now. 2019 was quite some time in the past. I think you can probably expect an offense that is going to be very physical, because that's something that since he was first hired as the intern, since he was first brought in as kind of the interim coach and then officially hired, Bob Dice has always preached wanting to be a tough physical team. And that's how a lot of the games were called last year. They kind of lean into the run. Of course, losing Devonte Williams is a huge loss. You never want to lose a guy in off-season training. So that kind of sucks. But, as harsh as this may sound in the CFL, it's kind of easy to replace running backs. You might not get the same level of production or the explosiveness that you would get out of someone like Devonte Williams. But, I think one of the American backs in camp now will probably be a good fill-in. And so I think you're probably going to see an emphasis on the run. I think you'll see a lot of play action. And then hopefully with guys like Rhymes and Acklin and Addison and Hardy, you'll see the ball being pushed down the field. And, maybe some more explosive plays.
Is there anybody that has a leg up in that running back competition right now, or does it seem pretty even at this point?
So I think today they just released the depth charts for tomorrow's game, and I think Armstead has been named the starter. That kind of checks out with what I've heard at camp. He's gotten a lot of reps with the ones. Hill has also been getting the kind of splitting carries, so having some time with the ones. So I think they'll actually give both of those American, I'll say rookies, they both have NFL experience, but they're both new to the CFL. I think both of them will have a chance to kind of state their case. Obviously, practice is one thing, but kind of doing it in a game when the hits are for real is something else. Of course, you also have Amliker Polk, who's Canadian and who was with the Ottawa GGs. It's probably unlikely, just because of the way that Ottawa does their ratio, that they would start a Canadian at running back. But you honestly never know. I mean, Jackson Bennett got some games last year. He got some carries here and there. So I could see Polk getting some kind of role like that. But yeah, one of the starters, I would guess maybe Armstead or Hill. But yeah, I guess we're going to have to wait and see how the preseason plays out.
It does seem like maybe the top 3 or 4 receivers are solid spots there. Acklin, Hardy, Rhymes. He's become a touchdown machine since going to BC. 17 touchdowns in the last 28 games, something like that. Is there anybody else that fans should keep an eye on? I know Nick Mardner, the recent draft pick, not saying he'll start, but there was a lot of people that thought he wasn't even going to be in the CFL this year. So it seems like that gamble sort of worked for the Red Blacks to have him in camp and on the field with the team. But is there any other newcomers at receiver that could be a threat?
In terms of Americans, there's Khalil Pimpleton. So he's a new rookie American, and he's smaller, but from everything I've heard, he's been very explosive in camp. He has great hands. The team had like an inter-squad scrimmage last week, and apparently he was like one of the stars. So yeah, he's had a very strong camp. I'm very interested to see what he does in the preseason game tomorrow, because he is starting. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. And then in terms of the Canadian receivers, yeah, Martyr could make an instant impact, because the reality is, with the way Ottawa does their ratio, they are going to be starting a Canadian at receiver. Now, whether that is someone like Keaton Brugling, who's from Ottawa. Sorry, not Ottawa. I can't even say that, especially because I'm from Carleton. So, I don't know what your language is, but there is a chant about Ottawa U players that I won't say. But yeah, I'm a Carleton Raven alum. So yeah, definitely cheering for the Ravens alumni. So it'd be cool to see Brugling do well. There's also Bloomfield, who was the 4th round pick that Ottawa added. Of course, Marco Dubois has been with the team for a few years. He's mainly featured on special teams, and Ottawa does kind of use him more as a tight end. But, he has kind of produced when he does get balls thrown his way. So it'd be interesting to see if he maybe kind of states a claim. And then Ottawa also did draft a couple of Canadian receivers last year. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly how that's going to play out. I think Mardner is very interesting because, as you said, a lot of people thought that he would kind of go to the NFL. And obviously he was with the Giants in minicamp. He didn't stick with them. But yeah, of course, his size is intriguing because he's 6'6", and you almost never see a 6'6" Canadian receiver. In fact, I think he's the 2nd tallest player on the team, behind Dante Bull, who's obviously an offensive lineman, a tackle. But yeah, so obviously with his height, jump balls would be a nice thing. But also he's got a lot of speed. So he's kind of a unicorn in the sense that you don't see a lot of Canadian receivers that are 6'6", 210 pounds, and can kind of move the way he does. So that will be quite interesting to see, if he can build on, a strong training camp and have a good preseason game, couple of games, and maybe kind of state his case that way.
Well, you mentioned Dante Bull, a physical offensive lineman, former first-round pick. They added veterans Darius Bladek and Philip Norman on the O-line. So I think they're going to be very physical to deal with on both sides of the ball. And we'd mentioned Darius Pickett already. I think he was an absolute star for the Argos last year. He's a great addition to that Red Blacks team, even though some veterans and longtime Red Blacks are no longer going to be there, like Sherrod Baltimore, Abdul Kenna, and Carrell Brooks retired as well. So how are you expecting that Baron Miles defense to shape up this year?
I think you can expect a very aggressive defense. Obviously, as I said, I think bringing back the entire defensive line was huge for them. And then when you pair that with the veterans that they have at linebacker, whether it's Pickett, whether it's Javon Santos Knox at middle linebacker, you also have Frankie Griffin. So there's quite a few names in there of guys who not only are tough and kind of have that swagger or attitude that you want from your linebacking core, but also they have the ability to cover. So I think when you have something like that, it gives your coordinators a lot of kind of leeway, and it allows them to be creative with your blitz packages and your stunts and twists and things like that. So yeah, I'm expecting Baron Miles' defense to cause some headaches for opposing offenses. You mentioned the secondary. The secondary has been an issue for Ottawa, unfortunately, for a while. Last year was a little bit difficult because you have those veterans, as you talked about, Kenna and Sherrod Baltimore and Brooks. A couple of them kind of struggled to stay healthy and on the field. Like, Kenna has always been just such a physical guy who's always giving 120, kind of plays with that reckless abandon that as a fan you love to watch, but just takes such a physical toll. So yeah, he missed some games last year. Baltimore missed a few games. He was banged up. And so yeah, none of those guys have returned, have been brought back. But I do think that there are a couple of young guys who could step up. And so yeah, that should be kind of interesting to see who establishes themselves. Because yeah, there's like, 3 jobs potentially up for grabs. And it's really going to be, I think, quite wide open.
Now, Devonte Dedmon returned from the NFL last year. I think he only played 2 games before missing the rest of the year with a shoulder injury. Do you see him being able to make an impact on offense and special teams? Or are they going to keep him doing the specials for the most part?
Well, I mean, Dedmon, he set the CFL record for becoming the fastest player to have 5 return touchdowns. And then, yeah, when he came back from the NFL, I mean, I think he was a little bit banged up. He got hurt last year, of course. I think there was, with all the different players playing special teams, it might not have been to the same standard you had in the past. So I think, that kind of made his life a little bit more difficult. If he's fully healthy, he absolutely is a game changer, and he is a constant threat to take it to the house. So I would love to see him back 100%. Obviously you want to sprinkle a guy like that in on offense, because when you see a guy that's that dangerous in the open field and how he can make people look like they're grasping at air, you definitely want to try and get the ball in that guy's hands, right? Even if it's just kind of a change of pace or throw him a deep bomb. I know that in the past, Ottawa's even had him line up at running back a few times and done handoffs and screens and different things like that. So I do think that there's a lot of potential to get creative with him. But yeah, I mean, personally, obviously, I'm not a GM or a coordinator, but I feel like given the depth Ottawa has at receiver, they might be kind of better served to just let him really focus on the return game. Like, let him thrive, let him focus on that 100%. Of course, mix in something here or there if someone goes down, but I would really like to see what he could do if he was fully healthy and just kind of totally dedicated to the return game, because I think that he could have a pretty special season.
It is the 10th season of Ottawa REDBLACKS football. As hard as that is to believe, Henry Burris will be in town for a visit. They've got the merch. Big Rec is playing the Canada Day game. Now, I want to take a couple moments off the table. I want to take the 2016 Grey Cup off the table. And is it the 2015 East Final? To Greg Ellingson, if I'm remembering correctly. Do you have a favorite moment in Ottawa REDBLACKS history? You've been writing about the team for longer than the team has been on the field, so
yeah, exactly.
I'd love to know.
Yeah, so I've been writing about them since 2013, so yeah, that is indeed true. Honestly, probably the home opener in 2014, the first game against the Argos. I mean, it might not have been the most offensively exciting game because Ottawa kicked 6 field goals, but they kicked a late field goal. I think it was the last minute to take an 18-17 lead. And then when the Argos were marching down the field, Jasper Simmons ended up picking off, I think Ricky Ray was the quarterback, to seal the win. And I was at the game, and it was just electric. Like, it just popped, like all day there was a buzz around town, all around Bank Street. I'm not sure if you've been to Ottawa, but Ottawa has, like, I normally sit on the south side because the north side sucks. But yeah, I'm a south sider, and so I have a bunch of friends and family. So we went to the Southsiders tailgate at Brewer Park. From there, have a couple of drinks, eat some food, walk down to the stadium, down Bank Street. And it was so cool. All the businesses, had signs up and stuff like that. And the vibe was so good. And then I think it was such a great way just to kind of announce that, Ottawa's back. And then just to get a win was just so sweet. So for me, that will always be a super, super special memory. I mean, the first time qualifying for the playoffs. I know you said the moment's off the table, but just Ellingson catching that bomb at the end of the 2015 East Final was, again, I was at the game, it's just electric. It's probably like the top sporting moment of my life to this day. I would say I even enjoyed it more than the Grey Cup win. Wow. The Grey Cup win, obviously, the following year was amazing, but just finally, getting back to the Grey Cup after everything, because for Ottawa, they hadn't been back since the 1981 game. So yeah, to finally have someone punch it back and just to come in that fashion was incredible. So yeah, those are some very good moments. And then yeah, I mean, there's just so many different things. You have, like, it's kind of silly, but like Gott when he crushed a beer in the end zone after a touchdown one game, that was great. You had the game where Henry Burris set the CFL record for completions.
Yeah.
There was the 2018 East Final where Trevor Harris was just on fire and threw 6 touchdowns and could not be stopped. There was the snow game in the 2016 East Final, also at TD Place, and that the players doing snow angels in the end zone. There's been a lot of really cool moments. So yeah, it's been great to have a team back, especially because obviously I'm not as old as some of the fans who have been following the team for decades, and with the Renegades and Rough Riders. I mean, I was alive when the Renegades were around, but I was a kid when I went to those games, so I don't really remember them. I was a teenager when the Renegades were around. So obviously that one, I was very into it. So yeah, I think for fans that have gone through losing a team and having it back, I think that also kind of gives a lot of the fan base perspective because, obviously the last couple of years have been, but I would rather my football team and have a team than to not have a team. So, I think that a lot of people kind of have that feeling, but also a lot of people are tired of the losing. People want to see winning and, so I think there's a lot of optimism and hope that this year is the year. On the 10th anniversary, I know they're doing a lot of different things. As you mentioned, they're flying a bunch of guys into town to kind of mark the Grey Cup win. For the 10th anniversary, they're doing all kinds of different themes and stuff like that. They'll be having a new jersey at some point released that I think will become the main home jersey, replacing the current one. I don't know exactly when that will be, but I think it will be in the coming weeks. I would assume it would be before they have their first home game of the regular season. Yeah. But that would be kind of nice. And there have been hints that it might have some retro features. And I mean, that's something the fan base has been clamoring for forever because, the Rough Riders were around for 120 years and there's a lot of history there. And I think anytime you can kind of incorporate that, then, you're doing something right. So I think there's a lot of reasons to kind of be excited about this season for a Red Blacks fan. And I mean, if you kind of look around the division, obviously Montreal is going to be a tough out, defending Grey Cup champs. You got to tip your hat to them. But, when you are the defending Grey Cup champs, you're also the hunted. So that's hard. And I mean, if you look around, I'm not a big believer in Bo Levi Mitchell. I'm just going to be honest and put that out there. He has not looked the same in recent years. So, Hamilton kind of tying themselves to him again for another season. Who knows how that goes? And then the Argos with Chad Kelly, his whole situation, how they've constantly mishandled that every single step of the way. And now he's going to be gone for at least half the season. So, they're going to be using a rookie at quarterback unless it ends up being Arbuckle. But even then, as someone who's watched a lot of Arbuckle playing football the last couple of years, I'm not sure how high his ceiling is. So, I mean, if you're an Ottawa fan and you're looking around the division, you got to like your odds against Hamilton and Toronto when you play them. So, yeah, I mean, it feels like there's a lot of possibility. But, of course, everybody kind of has hope in the preseason. So let's see how everything plays out. But, yeah.
Santino Filoso is a contributor at 3downnation.com. He's coming to us from Brazil, and all the way from Brazil, you heard him, Northside sucks. I think that's what I'll go with this year. Is Northside the one that's covered?
Yeah, they have the roof.
And that's why they suck? Or is it
Yeah, exactly. They're kind of soft, you know what I mean? Like, they don't want to get wet. They're made of sugar. I mean, historically, they might not have made as much noise, so they needed their roof there to help project that noise to the field, you know what I mean? So, yeah. No, I think that rivalry has definitely kind of simmered down a little bit. It has. In, years, for sure. Especially because it's when they redid the stadium in 2014, they kind of flipped the boxes that were on the north over to the south side, and the media's on the south side now.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, the South still. I'm still a South Sider, a proud South Sider for sure, always will be. But yeah, I don't know. I got to be honest. The North Side, especially because I think overall probably the average ticket there is a little bit cheaper, so they're getting louder. So I respect it. I respect it. They suck. They don't suck like compared to everybody else. They just suck compared to Southsiders, compared to other fan bases. I love them. You know what I mean? But yeah, like compared to the South, Northside sucks. Yeah, for sure.
Santino, thanks for doing this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Make sure you subscribe to see more CFL content all season long, including all of our team previews heading into the 2024 season.